Most people grew up with a happy little show called Pingu. Pingu was a show that had a clay penguin named Pingu, and it showed his adventures. The characters spoke some sort of penguin language. The original show ran from 1986 to 2000. There apparently was an unreleased episode that was released a year later. Now, this is where it starts to become interesting. When I was around 5 or 6, I saw the beginning of a Pingu episode called Pingu's Punishment on TV. I only saw a bit of it, but what I can remember was Pingu was very angry, and his mother began smashing plates. I also remember the episode was about Pingu playing outside when he was supposed to be doing his chores. My mother came in with the plate smashing part and shut off the TV and told me that dinner was ready. After dinner, I was looking up at the episode list on Wikipedia to find out that there was no episode called Pingu's Punishment was released. I thought this was an adventure to myself, so I contacted Trick Film Studio, the company that made Pingu. I asked them to complete a production guide of Pingu, and they sent me via email. I looked at it compared to the Wikipedia's list, and I noticed something was wrong with the finale series. Pingu helps his grandfather, which was the 23rd episode of Series 4, was missing. At the bottom of the list was an episode title called Pingu Ending. I asked for the synopsis, but they refused to give me one, stating it was personal information. I then Googled Pingu Ending Unreleased and then Pingu's Punishment. I found something. It was on RapidShare, and there was a file that was named Pingu's Punishment Unreleased Episode.zip, and I downloaded it. I went to my downloads and found it in the folder. It contained 2 files. One was a notepad file, and the other was fear.txt. I opened it and it read, "This is an unreleased episode of Pingu's Goo, dated back in April 11th, 2000. They originally planned to end the series, and this was actually released in some countries. Watch it at your own risk." I began to feel a little suspicious and my heart pounded, but my curiosity overtook me. I opened the second .avi file. The first part of the same episode was when I saw as a kid. However, something felt off. The theme song was distorted, and instead of Pingu's usual newt, there was the backwards audio. I recorded it with sound recorder and it played. "You can't survive this like beyond death." I found it very creepy, but continued with the video. I got to the part where Pingu's mother was smashing plates. Suddenly it cut to black. A blood-curdling scream was heard, and it faded back to the kitchen. Pingu's mother was sitting on the stool crying. It only sounded real. She began crying, but it started to sound like laughing. Suddenly it then cut to Pinga. Pinga was lying on the floor and her head was ripped off. I paused it there and I felt sick. But what made me more sick was that it wasn't clay blood. Either it was food coloring, or I didn't know what it was. I continued it. Pingu's mother kept crying. Suddenly it cut to a black and white video about 2 scientists going to a slaughterhouse. It showed a bunch of cows getting slaughtered. Suddenly it showed a penguin being stunned and then being hanged upside down. The crushers crushed the penguin into pieces. It began showing pictures of dead penguins. It cuts back to Pingu's mother crying. A trampoline was in the kitchen. There was also a fan. She jumped to the fan and blood splattered everywhere. The body of Pingu's mother fell down. It showed the pictures of the dead bodies of Pingu, Robbie, and the other characters. An old music box playing Hush Little Baby faintly played. I paused to go to the bathroom to vomit. I felt really nauseous and sick after witnessing what I just watched. I continued the video. A distorted voice, something played backwards. I recorded it and played in reverse. It said, "Your life will be pitch black within a few seconds. You must be smart enough to play this backwards, because you're stupid enough to believe me." My chest pounded. The credits were in the Times of New Roman. The background slowly continued to show disturbing images. It closed with a background of a mask with red eyes. The mask suddenly said in a distorted tone, "Darkness begins now." Suddenly my computer froze and the lights flickered and the power went out. The power came back on within a few seconds later. I was now shaking, and I wanted to find the source of the film. I got in contact with Carlos Bomini, the voice actor of all the characters. I pretended that it was an interview and talked about Pingu. I finally mentioned Pingu's Punishment. He stopped and asked where I had heard of that before. I explained everything to him, and then he told me the story. During the fourth season of Pingu, there was a writer and animator called Ted Goldman. Ted was a quiet man who usually wasn't that sociable. Sometime during the middle of the season, Ted's mother had been trying to reach something on the upper shelf, and the ceiling fan was still on. She got decapitated. Ted was immediately hurt by this and began submitting horrid ideas, such as Pingu killing all the characters, even asked Bomey to do a voice of Pingu dying. Goldman found out that Pingu was closing production at the end of the season. Ted passed it off as the episode of the series finale. Right after they watched the episode, they discovered Ted had been charged with animal cruelty, murder, etc. Ted left a parent note claiming that he was going to live in Antarctica. However, no records show that he was ever there, and that he was last spotted in Santa Barbara, California, purchasing a gun. They never found him. I was left shocked. Then, when I thought, it occurred to me that the entire episode played backwards. Starting from the part where the distorted voice began, I heard a scream, a shout, and an eerie voice that sounded something that still haunts me to this day. The only way out of this hell is death.